But this is something Americans should be asking their senators questions about. The Constitution says the president can't put people into certain positions unless you, the Senate, sign off. You should be outraged that he's trying to take your power away from you and go around you. The Congress has been supine. The Senate hasn't even made a peep. They should be protecting their constitutional role, and they aren't. So I think it's incumbent upon us to begin asking loud questions about why they're giving the executive branch a pass.
I do want to ask you before we start going to some of our viewer questions about some of the manipulation of titles within the U.S. Attorney's Office. What it made me think of was how Vladimir Putin would observe term limits in Russia by going back and forth from being prime minister to president and then again, so he wouldn't get termed out. But the acting U.S. attorney in Southern California, Bill Esela, was disqualified by a federal judge from cases concluding that the Trump appointee had stayed in the temporary job longer than allowed by law. And this was kind of a pattern that was repeated in New Jersey with Alina Habba and in Nevada with Sigal Chattah, who is the U.S. attorney there. The titles of acting, temporary. We saw this in the first Trump term where he made a lot of people acting in a capacity so as to avoid having to go through Senate confirmation. What's going on with the U.S. attorneys?
Yeah, so this isn't really about manipulating titles. It's about violating the Vacancy Reform Act, which permits presidents, when a U.S. attorney's position is vacant, to drop either someone already inside of the office in as an acting, or even bring someone in from the outside in certain situations as an interim. That can only be done for 120 days. And if that 120 days expires without a Senate-confirmed nominee for the position, then the local district court gets to put someone new in place. So in essence, as I understand it, the administration has been trying to avoid that rule by saying, oh, well, this person's gone. We're going to drop in somebody else for another 120 days. And the courts are beginning to say, you cannot avoid the clear dictates of the law by doing this and putting their own people in place. I think the courts are acting with a sense of restraint, trying to avoid a direct conflict with the administration. But when push comes to shove, this is very risky for the government. We've seen motions in this regard in the Eastern District of Virginia saying, for instance, that a United States attorney who's been put in place in violation of those rules, that any acts that she takes are a nullity. This could be the end of the James Comey prosecution, because Lindsey Halligan, the U.S. attorney there, is the only person who signed his indictment. And the government is now time barred from bringing a new one because the statute of limitations has elapsed. So if the court ends up buying his motion, it may well be that the case just gets dismissed because no prosecutor in the office signed off on it. I mean, there are very real world implications of this sort of effort. But Pat, I think that you're right when you go back to the prior administration and say this was something that Trump did then. He did not want to have to face Senate confirmation for his appointees because he knew in many cases they would be unable to get it. The Senate will not confirm Lindsey Halligan in the Eastern District of Virginia. That's why Alina Habba, that's why that entire debacle happened there. Now we see it in Los Angeles, where the impact is a little bit less because of the status of that particular U.S. attorney. But this is something Americans should be asking their senators questions about. The Constitution says the president can't put people into certain positions unless you, the Senate, sign off. You should be outraged that he's trying to take your power away from you and go around you. The Congress has been supine. The Senate hasn't even made a peep. They should be protecting their constitutional role, and they aren't. So I think it's incumbent upon us to begin asking loud questions about why they're giving the executive branch a pass.
Hi, I'm Pat Morrison, one of the hosts of America at a Crossroads. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and connect directly with our guests in our weekly live streams. Thank you for watching.
And of course, manipulation was my word, not your word. We'll point that out too. So I have the beholder moment. But it seems all of these regulations and standards have been in place for many, many years. But not until Donald Trump came along did it seem that they were being used as loopholes rather just as procedures that are generally observed to impose circumstances, people, situations that he wants to create. So, have what I'm wondering is who started looking at what the rules were, what the requirements were, and figuring out workarounds in the fashion that we've been seeing now in the second Trump administration as well.
Yeah, it started in the first administration. Trump has bought into this theory of executive power called the unitary executive. It was a fringe theory until Trump came into power. And the argument that it makes is that the presidency should be much more muscular and much more powerful than it has been in the wake of Watergate and the Nixon administration. So it's an effort to reclaim more power for the presidency, for instance, by giving the president the ability to fire at will among executive branch employees who typically are perceived to have civil service perceptions, or as you say, to drop in folks without going through Senate confirmation. And so this is lawyers who believe in this, who have tried to create a much more muscular presidency. I think there were some folks in the Federalist Society who thought that this was a desirable approach to government. So Trump has the benefit of some smart, good lawyers who are, as you say, trying to find loopholes in the laws that permit the presidency to take a much more powerful stance vis-a-vis other branches of government and even their own executive branch employees.
Down the road, does this mean nailing closed some doors that had been locked but not barred at all?
What I fear it means is that we're in a new race to the bottom, right? Something that this crew seems to forget is that what they're doing is creating new precedents and new norms. And what's to say that a Democrat won't come to power who will try to do this back to Republicans? This is why this has not happened before, is because everybody has understood that each presidency, each administration, that's just one hand in a long-running game of cards. And if you blow up the entire game over just that one hand, if you're so desperate to win the hand that you blow everything up, the game is at an end. That's the risk here.
And we'll see you again here. We look forward to your support and your continued attention to the programs that you see right now on your screen that we're going to be offering through the end of the year, a very important year with a perhaps even more important year ahead of us in 2026. I'm Pat Morrison. Thanks on behalf of all of the team here for joining us.